Hi everyone, welcome. Today we have a lot of beautiful produce from Food Forward and Social Justice Learning Center. We have Delicata squash, which I will be roasting in the oven with a little butter and brown sugar. And then we have some beautiful Brussels sprouts that I'm going to saute in the pan, and hopefully I'll caramelize a little bit. And we're just gonna plate it up. Super simple, easy. Cook time is about 40 minutes for the squash. So I'll do that first. And this is a really fun shape because when you get it ready, it makes these cute little circles. So this is a really fun thing to eat, and it's really pretty on the plate. So we'll start by cutting off the ends, and I'll do both. And then once the hole is visible, I'll take the trash bowl and I'll take my spoon. This spoon might be a little too big for this. No, it's perfect. And I'm just basically going to stick the spoon in there and firmly hold the squash and just center out the squash to get all the seeds out of there. And then we'll cut it into rounds. And that's pretty much it. The skin, I've washed these already, but you generally don't eat the skin. I think you can. I've never actually tried. I don't think anything bad will happen to you, but the skin actually acts as a way of holding these together and a protectant for everything inside. So it's a pretty amazing vegetable. Squashes in general have a really high amount of vitamin A, which is really good for so many things. They are really high in magnesium, potassium, and delicata squashes are actually really high in lutein, which is something that eggs also contain, the yolk of an egg. It's really good to fight degenerative eye disease and to keep your eyes generally healthy. And you know, ironically, like carrots are supposed to be great for your eyes, but they also have a lot of vitamin A and they have lutein. So there you go. So I've hollowed out the squash. It's all ready to go. I'll just set that aside, and I'm going to make rounds. So I think these are about 3/4 of an inch thick, and I'll just do the same thing. You just want to make sure that they're sliced the same thickness so they cook at the same time, but other than that, it's a pretty easy thing to do. Squash is a really hard vegetable, so you do have to have a pretty firm grip when you cut this. It's not as scary as a butternut squash, which is really big and awkward, but you need to make sure that you're not cutting your fingers and that you're cutting this firmly enough to cut it and not too firm that you go to the emergency room while you're making this. So here we go. We have a whole bowl of delicata squash, and now we're going to add some olive oil. And I'm not really going to pay much attention. I don't want to fry these. You know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to place these, I'm going to put a little olive oil in here, and then I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to brush them on the sheet that I'm going to put them in. So I'll just toss these around and just get them like a little covered with the oil, and you can just do this like this. I mean, it's almost like oiling like big bracelets or something. You know, I mean, for you guys at home with children, it might be fun to like let your kids play with this and like make some bracelets if you're interested. Okay, so these are all oiled up. I'll add some salt. Just a pinch, because I am actually going to be adding salted butter to this while it cooks, so you don't want to over salt. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to take the tray. So I've lined a tray with paper, but you don't have to do this. You can put one directly on a baking tray if you want to. And I'm just going to place the squash on the tray and get them ready for baking. They're not going to expand in the oven, so you don't need to worry about not putting them too close together. You can just put them all together. I'm going to cook these. I preheated the oven to 400 degrees, and I'm going to cook these for about 30 minutes, maybe a little more, and I'll check them midway and I'll flip them and I'll add a little brown sugar, and hopefully they'll look great and they'll be tasty too. So I'm just going to add a little bit of brown sugar, just a pinch. I mean, you could go like full on caramelized for like Thanksgiving or something, but right now I'm just adding a little bit of sweet. Squash is already naturally sweet, so we don't have to go too far. I could have done this in the bowl too, but I feel like doing it this way. And then now I'm going to add a little bit of butter to the center of the squash. So I'm just going to, just like a really thin slice, I'm going to put a slice in each center. This is completely optional, and there's no reason why you have to do this, especially people that are vegan and don't eat butter. This will be just as delicious without it. I just think that butter makes everything better, and so I like to use it, but you absolutely don't have to. Not a lot, just enough to get like a nice brown butter caramelized feel. Okay. So all in all, it was about 2 tablespoons of butter that I just sliced very thinly and added to the center of the squash. So I'm going to put these in the oven now. I'll check them in about 15 minutes, and if they look good, I'll flip them over. I'll put a little bit of brown sugar on the top, no more butter, and then we'll see you when they're done. See you soon. So we're back. We are going to saute Brussels sprouts today in accompanying with the squash. So I've gotten a lot of them prepared already just to save some time. And Brussels sprouts are pretty compact little beings. The interior of this is so compact that it really is clean. You just have to get off the like the outer leaves and give it a nice rinse to make sure that there's no dirt hiding underneath that, and then you're good to go. So for those of you who are really worried about germs, you can always soak Brussels sprouts in a mixture of like 4 tablespoons to 6 cups of water of baking soda to water, and leave it for like 4 minutes, and it will clear any bacteria that you need. But really, it's pretty great because they're clean. So I'm just going to cut off the bottom of this, and I'll just peel off the initial leaves, and it does not look like there's any dirt on here, so I'm just going to cut it in half. Brussels sprouts, surprisingly, are like super high in vitamin C, and of course they have fiber like all vegetables do, but they're so high in vitamin C that you could get more vitamin C from eating a Brussels sprout, or just as much than like eating an orange for the day. Like, they're really, really great. They're also really high in B vitamins, so they're like really nutrient-packed little vegetables. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I feel like they get a bad rap, and there's a lot of things you can do with them. So we're going to do something simple because not everyone has a whole bunch of stuff in their kitchen, and a pan will do. I'm just going to shave this one, and you know, if you had the time or you wanted to, you could shave a whole bunch of Brussels sprouts and you could make a salad. I'm just going to make a tiny little slaw to go on top of the food. So be careful of your knuckles, and it's just like cheese. I'm just going to grate it. And it's normal for it to fray. If you have a Cuisinart, a food processor, you could do this. It's not going to be as fine as this, but you could chop them up and make like a salad really easily. So I'm just going to save this part, and I'll put this in this bowl for later. And now I'm going to take these over to the stove with you, and we'll get cooking. Hey, so we're at the stove. We're going to cook the Brussels sprouts. I've turned on the heat to medium-high. It's probably a little too high. I'm not going to add too much oil, but just enough to coat the pan. These aren't going to fry. These are just going to sit in here and cook. And ideally, I'd like them to start face down, so I'm going to do that now. And there's like too many for the pan. Let me see if I can get these out. You know, I'm gonna try to put them all face down And I'll add more if I can. Oh, look, we got a whole one. We have a stowaway. There's a whole Brussels sprout in here. I'll put that one in there too. Oops, that's my timer for the squash. Hold on that. So I'm just going to put these face down and we'll start cooking. Hopefully they fit. Great. They're all pretty much in there. And I just want to get them golden brown. I don't want to burn them, which is very possible. So now I'm going to lower the heat a little bit and add a little bit of salt. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to brown the bottoms of these and then I'll flip them over and I'll just saute them for maybe 10 minutes, and when they're done, I'm going to add balsamic vinegar, just maybe like a teaspoon or maybe a tablespoon, because I think like Brussels sprouts and acid is really good. So I added a little salt. I'll just sit there, let these sit and cook. So they're not quite ready. I'll turn them over when they're a little more brown, and I'll raise the temperature just a little bit. I'll be right back. I'm going to check the squash. Okay, so we've been cooking this for a while. Full disclosure, I burnt a few. You don't want to get the pan so hot that you burn your Brussels sprouts before they're cooked, but they're not inedible, so we're going to eat them anyway. They're good. We're going to deglaze or kind of finish this with some balsamic vinegar. Just heads up, when you add a lot of balsamic vinegar to something really hot, the steam of that vinegar will knock you out. So I'm not adding that much, but I think I'll add like a capful, but you do have to be careful with that. Like super, super powerful smelling steam. And I think that's enough. Maybe I'll just add a little bit more. I'm gonna turn down the heat though, and then I'm gonna add some pepper, and we will plate it up. Okay, so we have our Brussels sprouts. They're finished cooking. To finish them off, I have some spicy peanuts that I got from Mario Brothers next door, and I'm just going to crush them and I'm going to add them to the Brussels sprouts. So our lovely volunteer Amy gave us these. I'm just going to smash these in the bag because there's no reason to get anything else dirty. The bag is fine. It's already holding the peanuts. And these have some spicy Thai peppers in there, so watch out. I'm just gonna take a few, I'll add them in and I'll mix it up, and then maybe I'll add a little bit to the plate. Okay, so with that, I'll set these aside. And then remember we grated these Brussels sprouts? I'm just going to add a little salt, lemon juice, and olive oil, and just make a small topping. Have some olive oil here. It's kind of like a coleslaw. It's like 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a little salt, and some lemon. And then I'll just mix that up. Maybe I'll add a little pepper too. That was a lot of pepper. A little, a lot, whatever. So just mix that up. You don't have to do this. Again, I think it's really fun when you're cooking a vegetable to add a different way of using that vegetable into your dish. It just makes things feel like, I don't know, decadent or fancy. So I'm gonna set that aside. And then we have our squash. So I said 30 minutes, but actually when my timer had gone off at 15 minutes, this was done. So I flipped it over and I basically just turned off the oven, and it's all caramelized and cooked and delicious and ready to go. So we're ready to plate it up and eat it. So I'm gonna get a plate, and I'll add a little bit of Brussels sprouts. One or two squash. one's too big. And then I'm going to add a few more peanuts. I'm going to take out this pepper because I don't want to kill my colleagues. People that don't like spicy food won't like that. I'll set that aside. And then I think I'll add the slaw to the side of this, just as a side note. On the side as a side note. And here we are. We have roasted squash, sautéed Brussels sprouts, and a Brussels sprout slaw to top it off. Really hope you enjoyed this time with us, and we'll see you soon.